Well, so this is intended to be much less of a um, formal presentation, and Frank got on his iPad. So basically, today I started thinking about it on Monday after the Thanksgiving weekend because just too many things last week, and just decided trying to put something together today was going to be a bit too short. We'll get focused on having some formal material for the next event we have in a couple of weeks. So today I thought it'd just be a good day to talk about what people have been modeling, kind of people an opportunity to show what they've been doing and talk about kind of projects at home. So with that, I'll kind of just throw it open for anyone to, and by the way, the sharing is open. So if you have, pictures of something you've done, feel free to share them and tell us about them.
Okay, Phil.
Yep. Hang on. Let me spotlight you. There we go.
Okay. Let's see if I do this, it'd be better. Okay, I can't do that. Anyway, I got tired of scratch building as much as I do. So I love building these little cats that Tamaya puts out. These are O scale, 1/48. And I did, when I did the weathering clinic, I talked about rust and peeling paint, and here's some examples of it. You can see it. Let me use a pencil or something like it to point. You can see there's about 3 layers of rust on there. And I can't do it backwards. See that? And even on the front. And anyway, I really like these because I can do them in a couple evenings. And when I scratch build something, it's like months. So every so often I've decided I'm going to do some fun short things because we're in and out of town. Don't tell Gruesome Newsome that we go in and out of town on a regular basis, but we go to Modesto and Sonora on a regular basis, although we're sort of avoiding Sonora at the moment because the COVID stuff is just going crazy there. And my daughter's had it, my son-in-law, and probably the grandkids, but we don't want it. So anyway, any questions?
That's cool.
Yeah, it's great, Frank.
Yeah, it looks great.
Probably going to build 4 or 5 more of these if the COVID continues another year. Okay, that's mine.
So that's the respite of instant gratification in lieu of
because we have none otherwise. So I'm going to turn off my video and audio. I'll turn the audio on when I need it because my wife's on a call and our internet doesn't like too many things on at once.
So Earl, what have you been doing? You have to have been doing something interesting, or did we lose Earl? I think we lost him. Wow.
I've started a depot kit I could share.
Cool. Yeah, no.
Let's see. I think I'm sharing.
Yes, you are.
You are.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I only took 2 pictures, but this is a rags kit. I'm SN3, so it's the Placerville depot. So I like the interior decorate things, so I've been taking time doing the inside as well. And then I took the learnings and got motivated on the scribing, so I actually have one of those scribing tools, thanks to Phil, and scribe the bottom to give kind of that you know how they in the depots they used to put the boards down and the lower half kind of at a diagonal. So I scribed it and then stained it, and so it's starting to turn out pretty nice.
By the way, not thanks to me, thanks to Frank and Frank's son.
Ah,
I mean, that's the interesting. So apparently Frank's son actually made one of those, and Frank, made a comment about it in the clinic he did. But you notice he made this comment about, oh yes, you use the wood grain scribing tool, and my little brain went off and said wood grain scribing tool, and that's kind of what led to it. So it's really 100% Frank's idea and Frank's son's innovation. So I don't want to take credit for that.
okay,
Thanks,
well, here it is.
Cool.
And
Yep.
the one thing, so I actually made myself a cover for it because I'm afraid having all those knives exposed. So I 3D printed a little cover case for it because I didn't want to get myself poked.
There you go. That's good. So Earl, you're back. I made the comment, you must be working on something interesting.
No, I had a computer problem. I had to reset it.
Ah, okay.
So
No, but I mean, you must be working on something interesting generally.
yeah, I've actually swamped with one-to-one scale projects that I won't bore you with, but I think I'm going to have just a quick something to show you in a minute.
Cool.
I've been cleaning out my space here and dug up some extra plywood, and I built a display setup so that I can display my O-scale, various O-scale, including like O-scale, standard gauge and narrow gauge and very narrow gauge.
Cool.
So it's nothing special, and I'll put some ballast and paint it to get it to look nicer later on. And also I dug up this HON 3-track test track. And the only thing that's special about this, it's about 30 years old, and I put the track down with Pliobond, which is one of the things that's recommended in Mallory's track book. And this has been actually like kicking around on a shelf with things on top of it and below it. And it's still perfectly fine.
Cool.
So Pliobond is a good way to do it if you do it properly. So just 2 track lengthens.
I show this is not a very high detailed project, but so at the club in Pleasanton, one of our members is doing a bunch of F units, and they're all nations. And instead of having empty cabs, we wanted to put a cab in them. So this is actually, we took some measurements and found some attempts some people had done. This is actually a 3D printed base and chairs and control stands and the back plate that sits in a channel. So you kind of slide this into the cab of the All Nations, and then you can drop that back in. It fits down into a channel here. And the idea here, by the way, is not to make this look at all prototypical. It's just to, when the engines go by the public, because these are club engines fundamentally designed to be run either for operations or for shows. There's actually, an engineer, et cetera, on the interior. So it was a quick project, not intended, again, to be, anything for examination, but more just for driving by. So, and we have about, I think we have 8 or 9 engines now to do. So the idea is to make them, the other thing we're going to do is take the same design and change it so you can put a camera in it and have a camera cab view out of the engine. So they're kind of now we got the design to fit anything we want into the cab pretty easily. So not very detailed, but
it's good enough. Gives the illusion.
yep. So Earl's back. Earl's fighting his computer. Like, So I did go to Costco, and Costco has a really nice monitor on sale. It's a 2160 32-inch monitor by Samsung, and it's pretty amazing. Since we're going to be home again for another 6 to 8 months, you begin to think about that your monitor is now your primary window on the world.
That's bigger than my
So
Pro
my
TV.
camera system is not going to work.
Oh no.
It's, the computer is confused between my little GoPro camera and the whole setup. So what I can do is and it's not going to show up the structure I was going to show you guys. This is a welding shop. It's got, the micro LEDs on the inside. It's got complete interior detail and all that. This one was actually fairly complicated to put together from the sense that all these LEDs, I didn't have any room inside, to run wires. All the wires are run on this beam across the top here. And then they kind of come out, they go through a wall, come out the bottom over here and tie into some resistors underneath. But this is kind of the project du jour.
Cool.
Very nice. Very nice.
Outstanding, Earl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, side question, what's the boom that you use for your GoPro?
It's from Smart Tree.
Ah, okay.
It's kind of nice because it's got the knobs here, and it's got teeth so it locks. And I've got a whole setup over here with well, it's not going to reach now. Yeah, I've got a splitter so I can look at what comes out of the camera. I've got a little monitor set up here. This was kind of going to be a test run to do, a hands-on clinic like Frank did. And
Right.
that's why I wanted to kind of test it today. So the computer is confused between the GoPro and everything else about which monitor, which speaker, which microphone. So
yeah,
that's why I had to get out and reboot the computer because nothing was working. So
yeah,
I will debug this later. It works fine standalone, but obviously not for the Zoom meetings.
yeah. Well, that's what caught my eye was, some type of setup for doing online classes or where you can have an overhead camera. Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually, again, once I get it set up, I'll show you again, but it's really nice, especially having the monitor right in front of you so you can see what your hands are doing.
Right.
That's great. Let's see. So,
Well, I could bore you guys with details about plumbers and electricians, termite inspectors, kitchen remodels, inspectors, furnace repair, and all that, plus vacancies in my rentals. But you probably don't want to hear my whining.
Well, we did on the same, we had a guy come in and re-grout all our tile. And it's like we have 2 new bathrooms now. So I'll bore you with that, but if anybody needs somebody to redo grout, the guy did a great job.
so I was actually trying to decide how to go through this, and I don't think today is probably the right time. This is actually from a this is actually a figure from an article I just sent into the NMRA for the magazine. So this is, basically this is the area I'm building on a module. This building is an acrylic building, so it's plexiglass like this one. It's now covered with wood. I've actually decided to put wood on the inside. I just ordered that from Northeastern. So actually I was looking at this truss, and the more I looked at it, the more I thought, well, that looks pretty good. And if you did a little better job painting it and a little more focused, it'd look really good. And maybe you could do a whole building out of it. So that's actually a fully printed 3D framed warehouse. It's 20 by 8 inches in O scale. All of the trusses are locked in. It's all pin locked. The front and back wall are actually printed as 3 pieces and epoxied together with pin locks that are, pins that are alignment pins that are pre-done in the 3D prints. So like if you look on the left there, you'll see the lights. Trying to figure out how to do the lighting. Let me stop sharing for a second. So this is, hang on, let me spotlight. I spotlight myself. So this is actually a printed truss. And if you notice what it's got is it's got into the print, there are pockets for these 2 brass rods to run across. And those are going to be the power feeds. So I can run, plus 12 volts down one side of the building, ground down the other side, 2 wires down, and each truss will pick that up on either side here, and the wires carry them across. And then the lights, which are these I found on eBay, they're in little, and you see them, they're actually in the 3D print. And then they'll connect to the wires right there. So all the electrical wiring actually becomes integral to the structure of the building. So that's kind of where I've been working on. The thing I'm working on and kind of starting to try to figure out how to paint it, which is kind of the challenge. And then the last thing, which is I think going to be fairly interesting, is this is actually a roof section. And I'm going to print 3 of these for 3 sides on the roof. And then you can put fairly thin .020 plastic on it across all of them, glued together. There's basically these pieces on the sides for strength, again, with alignment pins, so you can glue the roof together. So the whole roof will be essentially a fully formed object with all the structural elements built into it and just drop in place.
Hey, Phil, for those lights, are there LEDs? Are there resistors for the LEDs?
What I'm going to do, there are resistors for the LEDs. They came with them. They're not built into them. They ship separate.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is, so my thought is on the top of the wall over here, I'll have the power running along and it doesn't need to be insulated. It's just going to be an uninsulated wire painted black or brass rod. On one side, I'll just put a jumper wire to this brass right here.
Okay.
And then on the other side, I'll put a resistor. And so I have one resistor for the 2 lights.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my thought process. And by the way, just as kind of a final on this whole concept, that's actually a reasonably 2x4, 8-foot wall in O scale. And this is the same thing in HO. And this, by the way, is reasonably flexible. But I think you'd probably want to do it in resin. But, I think in resin, you could do the same technique in HO.
Yes, yeah. I was going to say, what resolution did you print that at? 0.2?
It's a 0.4 head and 0.16 of height. So
Okay,
it's not
1.6 height. Okay.
Yeah, it's not the maximum. And I was playing with it. I threw something together to see. And so, by the way, the article has kind of going through, you basically build the box for the wall, and then the studs are individual things, and that way it's really easy to replicate them. And you just you have one dimension, and you just add on to it,
right, essentially
the distance, the next, 16 inches in whatever scale you are, and just go replicate, and then you got a wall.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a pretty interesting way to do stuff. So like I said, I put an article that basically got it to the point where I am, where I've got the walls done in that for the NMRA magazine. So hopefully they'll be interested.
Did you print those using Shapeways, or do you have a printer?
I bought an Ender 3 printer. Hang on, let me remove the spotlight there. I bought an Ender 3 printer a while back, and it was like $189. So, it's not very expensive at all. And it's just printed there. The only downside to it is you don't get real wood grain. You have to kind of sand it if you want to get any wood grain.
Yeah.
Take some heavy, but if you just take heavy sandpaper and kind of roughly rough it up a little bit, it looks okay.
You printing in PLA?
Yeah, it's just PLA. It's just gray PLA.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is, if you're just doing like you're showing a stud wall, that's not exactly fine finished wood in the first place. So, generally that can have a rough look, and it looks just.
And the other thing I found is that the side of the wall, so this is actually the side of the wall that's on the print bread. It turns out that actually kind of squishes everything and makes it look. So the way this is going to be done in the building is that wall will be on the inside. This is going to be covered with 1x8 strip wood on the outside. So the outer side where you see a little bit more grain will be under the wood, and you'll never see it. So what you'll see when you look down into the model is the side that's more finished. And then, like I said, hit it with some sandpaper, it gets a little grain in it. And then it's really down to painting it. So I'm trying all of the miscellaneous wood painting techniques to figure out which one works and looks reasonable. So
I'm assuming you're priming it first before you paint it?
Yeah. Well, I kind of wash it and then just you prime it with, I just prime it with regular priming, gray priming paint. It's, this wasn't gray. This was shot with the camouflage khaki, I think is what it is.
Okay.
I thought that was because this is interior wood. So it's not that, you don't want that gray outside weathered finish on what would be ostensibly a 15 to 20-year-old building indoors. You just don't get the same kind of weathering. So it's got to be more brown.
Yep.
The khaki's a good color.
Yep. To start with. And I'm trying to figure out how to build up on it. There's a wood kit from Vallejo, and I'm going to try that with the airbrush. Because it turns out it's a lot of pieces to paint if you start doing anything that's a lot of little hand brushing. I mean, because you look at it, each one of those walls is like that long, huge pieces. So.
Hey, Jonathan, kind of following up from your presentation a couple of meetings ago, I've started playing with Tinkercad again for something I want to do. And I was playing with Shapeways and kind of gave up on that. And I'll tell you, I got farther along in about 20 minutes playing with Tinkercad than I did with anything in Shapeways. So
Tinkercad is
a lot of progress.
Yeah, Tinkercad is my go-to for just easy, quick things. If it doesn't have to be perfect, exact down to the millimeter, it's so easy to use.
Yeah, Frank Markovic had told me about it, and I looked at it but never got into it. So your 3D printing clinic got me restarted. So I'm pretty happy with what I've got so far. I need to start over because I was kind of piecing things together, but it's actually a fairly straightforward program to use.
Yep.
Fine. Is it a 3D CAD like Sketch?
It is a 3D CAD system. I would loosely say CAD because when you think about a true CAD system, you've got put in all these wonderful dimensions and stuff like that. It works with geometric shapes, and so you need a box. You grab a box out of their library, and then you can shape it, size it to what you want, and then in 3D space, move it to where you want, and then join two pieces together. So it's kind of like you build up your 3D shapes by adding different shapes to it.
Kind of like 3D Lego.
Yeah, it actually, there is if you're in Tinkercad, there's a whole thing where you can go into like their Lego mode, and it literally shows you Lego blocks. So for kids, it's like great.
The thing that I like the best about it that I was having trouble with, I'm building something that's going to be like a boxy frame, let's call it. And the nice thing with Tinkercad is you can move the plane of reference to any surface of the box. Because the hard part I had with Shapeways was getting two things aligned on the same plane, and it's next to impossible. With Tinkercad, you can move the reference plane to any of the surfaces and lock things into that plane.
Yep.
That was one of the things I liked about FreeCAD, is that you can make any plane and any body an active surface to model on. So like if you look at those, these little pieces here, they're almost impossible to see on the camera, that hold the rods in place. I mean, basically you start by going to this plane and then you do the sketch on it, then you pad it out, then you go back and you put pockets in it. And so it's exactly the same process. You pick a plane and you build on it. So you kind of start by taking a big object and subtracting the stuff you don't want, and then you fill the space with objects. And
Right.
it's all the same. What's interesting is I think the tool is less important than having people understand the process you go through to take something and convert it from something in your brain into something that's in a 3D space. And it's this kind of additive subtractive process that's really interesting.
Yeah, and the approach that I've taken is, I've gotten into where I build models up, and so I'll start with a small piece that I need to get, and I'll sketch it out in Tinkercad or sometimes Fusion or whatever, and then I'll print that little piece and kind of test it and say, oh, I got this piece or this section is now kind of what I want. Then I'll build the next piece, join the two together, do another quick print and say, okay, am I on the right track? And sometimes I find, oh, no, I'm beginning to stray. And so it's really this, at least with the 3D modeling and putting it in a CAD system, you kind of break it, like you said, into pieces. Start with little pieces and then glue them together. Not physically glue.
It's kind of interesting because Tinkercad, besides shapes, has holes. So if you need to put a hole in something, you draw the shape, but it's a negative thing. And when you join them, the thing that's a hole subtracts from whatever the solid.
Well, and then what's really powerful with it is you can take and build up a complex solid object and say, now make it a hole, and then put it in another piece. And then all of a sudden you've just created this really complex whole piece that you can replicate.
So here's an interesting, if you look at this down here at the bottom, this has to fit up over the top of the motor housing that's literally underneath this in the cab. And if you look over here, the way this is done is this is basically a square. And then you define this shape here and it becomes a hole all the way through. So, and by the way, the other thing that's interesting about all these little things glue on, because I figured out there's just no way to print this. If you try to print this on the print bed sitting the way it is right now, it tries to fill all this in with support and it puts in just a huge amount of plastic in there. And I realized that was going to be a real problem. So it actually has to print basically with the print bed on the back side of this down here. So actually all these pieces are printed separately and just glued on after it was printed, because there was no way to print it as a, and that was the other kind of realization, is you don't have to print things as a single piece. You can print one piece and print some other things and add them on too to build a model. So.
Well, yeah, and back on that whole creating the quote negative space, when I did that speaker baffle for the little diesel engine, I actually first built up a 3D piece that would fit perfectly into the cab of the locomotive. Then I drew a 3D piece of the speaker I had, and when I had that the right shape and size of the real speaker, I said, make this a hole, and I was able easily to take my now cab piece and remove and make a perfect fit for the speaker.
There's actually an interesting I bet Fusion does the same thing, but some of the more advanced CAD packages, you can actually take a shape and you can define a wall thickness and remove all the interior volume.
Yes.
So you literally you could, if you design something to fit in a space, you could then take that object and turn it into an enclosed vessel and then open something. It's like creating speaker enclosures. Pretty interesting to think about things you can do when you kind of learn the tool set.
Yes.
And by the way, I know very little about this, so other than just the technology, kind of the way it works. I've seen some guys that do amazing work with the CAD machines, CAD
Yes.
programs.
Yes.
That use it and know what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm more of a self-taught. I mean, I took architecture and drafting in high school many years ago, but that was not my profession. So
Right. But but for everybody, it's an interesting thing. One of the things you talk about is things that get you excited and learning and that kind of stuff. It is a whole different learning experience. It kind of challenges you to learn something new, and it's really not. With the price of the printers now, if a couple of guys get together, you can buy a printer for $100 each, and actually, do some of this stuff. So.
That's actually a good point. You could probably, if you get 2 or 3 guys together, because the duty cycle on the printer isn't going to be very high. So you get 2 or 3 guys together, you can afford to buy a pretty decent quality rosin printer and share it and probably get really good use out of it.
Right. That's, yeah, exactly. Well, I think when you look at what Shapeways charges for things, it would be interesting to know what the payback is. But if you had 3 people using it, I'm sure you get to the payback in a reasonable amount of time.
Well, yeah, the other thing it encourages is the more you use it, the more you find uses for it, right? So as you look for details, I've often thought that what's going to happen is the detail market, is going to shrink over time because, if you need a custom bell or a particular horn or whatever that's prototypical for a very rare, who's going to have it, right? No one's going to have it, so you print it, right?
Right.
And the more you do that, the more you use it, and pretty soon you're doing all your details that way.
Well, it was like that printing press. I mean, there's nobody making a printing press for us model railroaders. I just happened to want one. And so I found a 3D model and printed it, and so detail parts, I think, yeah, probably 10 years from now, it'll be all 3D printed.
Yeah, I agree.
There's an opportunity to create the model railroad version of not of Shapeways, but more of Thingiverse.
Yeah.
Right, a place. So the problem with Thingiverse is it's hard to find stuff on Thingiverse. If you put in like O-scale something, you just don't know what you're going to find. Sometimes you find stuff that like, wow, I'm amazed that was even there. And how would I ever find that? Because you're totally dependent upon what somebody entered when they put in whatever they put up there. And
it has the worst search engine.
Exactly. So it would be interesting to have, because if you did a model railroad focused, thing place, you could have when you checked an object in, you could say what scales is it suitably printed in resin, in filament. You could have enough specific words and matches that you could make the search engine much more effective because you can manage the entry in a model railroad way.
Well, yes, I totally agree with that. But the other aspect is the beauty of 3D printing is I can take an O-scale object and with a little math, I could likely make it an S-scale object.
I was more thinking about in terms of the suitability of it to be printed at scale.
Right.
I'm kind of talking about, if you had the 3D HO wall, you'd say really not reasonably printed. Filament requires resin. So when you looked at the part, in your scale what technologies it kind of matched to.
Exactly.
It's an interesting thought process about something that can be much more focused for the hobby, and I think addresses exactly the comment about more and more people designing their own thingies. So,
well, yeah. When I built the cover for the wood scribe STL you sent me, I was thinking, where could I put this to contribute back? And I was thinking along the same lines as what the NMRA or model railroaders need is we could start building up our own grassroots library of putting all this stuff. I made a particular part for a particular locomotive.
I think it's a
Throw it out
great,
there.
I think it's a great thought process, and I'll bring it up and pass it along to Chris and Lisa, to bring it up, that it's an interesting, and would be an interesting investment to have and think about how you put things in and store them.
Yep.
It'd be a great service value for the community.
Yes.
So by the way, as I told Frank, I did take that wood grain, and I put it on Thingiverse. So if you go to Thingiverse and use their search and search on wood grain tool, you should find it. And so if you've got the cover, you may want to just put it up in Thingiverse, and you can link it to that. So when people see that, they'll see the cover.
Well, actually,
If you want, you can send it to me, and I'll add it in as a second item in the same thing.
Or what I can do is they've got this whole remix concept.
Put it in the remix with both of them.
I'll put it in
That's
remix
great.
with it.
No, it's super.
Yeah.
Phil, again, what did you call that on Thingiverse?
I just called it wood grain tool. Here, hang on. I'll go find it, and I'll put it in the chat. Huh.
Yeah, I tried to find it, and that wood grain tool didn't work.
Yep, I can see that.
Like I said, they've got the worst search engine.
Huh. Well, it looks to me like it didn't actually load up. So what I did must not have actually been loaded up. I'll have to try to do it again. I apologize for that.
Well, Phil, ideally, if you just send it to me.
I'll just mail it to you. Actually, I tell you what I can even do. I probably can do even one better is I will just throw it right in the chat as a file. How's that?
Oh,
I should be able to do that right now. It's more, the biggest problem here now is finding it.
yeah.
So it is in the chat.
Hmm.
It's really not very big, actually.
Shoot, I don't see it.
Did anyone else see it in the chat?
Yeah, no, it came up in the chat.
Oh man. What's
I'll mail
going
it. I'll
on?
mail it to you, Frank. Don't worry. It'll
Okay. Maybe something.
Yeah, sometimes chat is weird depending on the device you're on. I think sometimes if you're on a device and it won't let you take a file, it may not show you a file because it doesn't want you to be frustrated.
That must be it.
Yeah.
Are you on a laptop or a tablet?
I'm on an iPad.
Oh yeah, it probably won't show the file because you can't render it.
Yeah. Well, when I could have put it on the PC on my Mac, but when I showed the model, I wanted the better camera. My Mac's old. The camera's terrible.
Well, yeah, and the bigger problem with laptops and webcams is the guys who design them generally make the assumption you're using them for video, and therefore they're not designed for shorter focal distance. So the problem with this is a Logitech camera. I got that from them, and it's really, but you see when I get in here, you start losing focus.
Yeah.
Because it's designed to start focusing right about here where my face is going to be versus that close.
Actually, though, its depth of field is pretty good, frankly. It's quite good given what you're talking about.
And it's a good camera. So I actually tried to use this. I got it about 3 months ago, and I tried to use it with my old computer, and it actually wouldn't work very well. I actually ended up buying a new computer here recently. So it's the lockdown. They said that I saw an interesting thing. There was a guy in San Francisco who's a plastic surgeon, and he said plastic surgery business is going through the roof. He said because everybody in San Francisco is sitting at home watching themselves on video all day, getting upset with how they look, and they have lots of money because they're not going out to eat and they're not going on vacation. I mean, literally, this is on KCBS. He made this. He said that's why my business is going through the roof. And that's why I figured, I bought a new PC because this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 6 months. Just enjoy it. I'm not spending money on anything else, no trips or anything.
Well, as guys, we can just grow beards and cover half the problem.
That's right.
Yeah, for those of us that can grow a beard.
Beards have
My beard looks really weird. It's different colors depending on the part of the face.
The beard has two advantages, right? The first is it hides anything, but the second is just a lot less work.
I found that my beard that I had for 43 years had gotten so white, and with my reading glasses, people would bump me on the street and call me Santa Claus. So I decided it was time to get rid of the beard.
You don't want to be
confused right now is that they won't fit under a mask well.
You don't have to get rid of the beard. You just have to trim it once in a while, and they don't mistake you for Santa Claus, because I had that problem too.
Phil, I got it. Thank you.
Cool. Yep. And if anybody else, you just send me an email and I'll send it off to you if you want anything. And Fran Foley also, he actually took it and he put some ribs on it and made it a little bit more like a pin. And I don't know if you go to Foley Locomotive Works, I think he's on Facebook. He may be offering it for sale. So I think he's was thinking about it. So it's a great tool. I really thank Frank. It helped a lot. It made it much quicker to weather things than the way I've been trying to do things in the past. And you can get in. The problem on that one building, it's actually using board and batten, and it's board and batten from Northeastern, so it's actually sheet. And so trying to get in between the battens with like a razor saw to do the wood and wood grain, it's almost impossible, but that thing just fits right in there and you can just run it down. The only thing you have to be is careful. If it runs a little bit wide, it'll take part of a batten out, and then you have to go really distress the heck out of the batten to make it look like it was normal versus a mistake. So, well, I think most of the best weathering effects are probably mistakes. Frank can probably comment on that.
I've used all sorts of weathering to hide mistakes.
Exactly.
But now I'm really careful when I build, so that I don't want to do it because I like to pre-weather everything.
Yep.
And if you do that, you can't use it as easy to hide mistakes.
They always talk about the expert's the one best at hiding his mistakes.
This is what I need help with because I particularly make lots of mistakes. So that's where I need the most help.
Well, the interesting thing with the 3D printing is that your mistakes don't show up as hidden. They show up as a pile of plastic that's to be thrown away. I mean, so basically, and I'm sure, Jonathan, you got like this basket of stuff that you've done that was wrong. And you just I kind of figure the idea is to keep it in a bucket, and eventually you have this big bucket of miscellaneous plastic parts. It's kind of a representation of failure.
I've been trying to figure out, I think there's a market for being able to take the PLA, melt it back down and make it a spool again, because you end up with a lot of leftover parts.
I was just going to ask about that because unlike the rosins, there's no chemical reaction. It's just heat and just
Right.
It occurred to me that you should be able to reuse the plastic unless the heat changes its molecular structure and it loses its flexibility once you melt it and re-extrude it.
Yep.
I don't know.
There's a potential junkyard in your future.
Yes.
The only problem is I think if you start mixing colors and stuff, I wonder how that becomes a challenge.
Well, if you're going to paint it, who cares?
Right. No, I understand. Yeah. One of the things this is, by the way, just so anecdotal, it's probably not believable. And Jonathan may have a better feel, but my general impression is that gray plastic prints better than the highly colored plastics like a black or a blue. The ones that have more color, I think getting the color in impacts the plastic. And I don't know what the natural color of the plastic is. I have a funny feeling it's kind of a creamy white. And
Yeah.
I think I'm beginning to think that it extrudes best in the natural shape, and adding colors into it impacts the extrusion. Because if you look at the scraper, I printed it with gray and the blades fit in really well. You print the same thing in black and it's hard to fit the blades in. It's clear the black has a different tolerance level inside the shaft. And so there's kind of this anecdotal belief in my mind and that's why you see all the stuff I printed was gray, is that the gray plastic prints more accurately than the black or the blue that I have.
So yes, I have noticed difference in colors within a same brand, but I've noticed I have a go-to brand in PLA type that for me it just prints like beautiful every time. I can first try it always prints.
Right.
So there is a huge difference in the colors and the manufacturers.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share. So I'm still playing with it, but I took that design and there was one problem with it, and I didn't like how the blades fit in. So I've been tinkering with it, literally tinkering, and created can I zoom in on this? So I actually made a kind of a key where the X-Acto blade fits into it, and then I have a cover that just snaps on place. So that way I can just pop it off, drop in the 6 blades or whatever, and they all just kind of fit in real, and they're held nice and tight. Then I pop the cover, this little piece on, and so I still need to work a little bit on the printing, but once we get the Tinkercad, or sorry, Thingiverse set up, I can post this as a remix.
Cool.
Say you put multiple blades in there?
Yeah. Yeah, so it holds, how many?
7. It's designed to hold 7.
Yeah, 7 blades.
Interesting.
Yeah, because then you can get, the nice wood grain scribe and
Right. You just
slide it in.
Yep. Got it. And
So this was based on what Frank said. So essentially, what this one does is it's got a pin here that's essentially a piece of filament. And so you you basically start the blades in, and then you have to put them on a block of wood and push them in. I think that's what Jonathan was saying, is you got to be a little careful. and then you just put a piece of filament through, and that locks them in. And then when you drag these 7 blades, they create the wood grain. And that was Frank's tool.
Yeah, you drag them on the backside, right? Just to score them.
I've done it both ways. You get it deeper and you cut this way, you get broader when you go the other way. So
yeah, I've been using mine both ways too. Sometimes the pointy end and sometimes the more blunt end, depending upon what I want.
And
I
then,
think we're going to be ready for another Frank clinic on using the tool effectively.
and then you hold your blades in. That's just a friction fit, or that just you put your little block.
The one I did, what it does is you push the blades in and they kind of are held in very tightly with friction, but then there's a hole that's right at the back of that slot. And there's a hole on either side, and it's sized so you can take a piece of the filament and you push it through and just cut it off and it becomes a lock pin. The downside is that it's fairly tight, and when you put the blades and you get them started, you have to turn them over and put them on a block of wood to push them in. And I like what Jonathan did where you just drop them in. The other thing I was kind of playing with, and I hadn't played a lot with, was if you go from 7 blades to 6 blades, do you get better wandering patterns in the wood? And so I'm kind of thinking, if you think about the way that tool looks, if you only put 6 blades in it and you got the angle down fairly far, would the blades start wandering? Because the holders were sized for 7. If you've got 6, they're not going to be held as tightly and they're going to wiggle. And does that give you more wiggle in the wood grain? So that was something I wanted to play with, was to see if they were held side to side, if they were held less tightly, would you get more kind of wiggle to the wood grain that would look more realistic?
The answer to that is yes. Because in the one that I've been playing with the key in it, I actually tried that because I wanted the grain a little further apart, and the blades wobbled, and I just all of a sudden ended up with a very wobbly grain.
Right.
Which isn't what I really wanted for what I was doing, because I was doing the wood things. So what I ended up doing is because I wanted it a little bit farther apart than the blades naturally, I actually have spacers, and so I dropped in a blade, drop in the spacer, dropped in a blade, and so then I had more gaps in it.
The whole adjustable wood graining tool design.
Yeah, pretty much that's what I'm shooting for.
See what you created, Frank?
Yeah, I've done a lot of experimenting with it too. Put less blades in. I epoxy them in because, and this is just a warning, if I've had them a blade break in the middle. And when I epoxy them, it seems to have solved that problem. But the first one I made with my son made, we used we use an X-Acto, one of the tools for holding. I'll turn my video on. She's offers one of the for holding the bigger blades. I think it's a number 2 blade, and took the insides out, and we were able to put quite a few in there and epoxy them in. And it had a nice handle, but being a typical model railroader and cheap, I didn't want to. I think that handle is $5-6, something like that. So I'd rather not spend that much.
The other question that'd be an interesting question to try is whether using new blades versus old, very weather-worn blades creates a different effect. And Frank may have actually done that, but
I'm taking them at lunch today.
Yeah, and that was part of one of the other motivations I made mine, where it had like the key and I could take the blades in and out. That way, if I wanted like duller blades, which I have a bunch of those because I can't throw used blades away, they might be useful. I can drop in the used blades, and then if I need or want something really sharp, I can just easily, same handle, just pop in new blades.
In fact, you might even get an interesting effect if you mix new and old blades, depending on how blunt the tips of the old blades. You might get an interesting effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Lots of fun. So is there, one of the things I guess I wanted to make sure before we close, do we want to shoot for this time 2 weeks from now? Or do we want to move back to the evening time?
Did we have anybody from
Hawaii?
Hawaii actually show up?
I don't know that we have. I don't know that we did last week I should have asked. I didn't see anyone that I know was from Hawaii last week.
I myself like this time. It's, but I don't know what other people want to do.
I mean, personally, I like the idea of having this in the morning and then you got the rest of the day clear. And Saturday evenings tends to be for us one of the evenings where my wife schedules stuff. But yeah, I'm more than willing to do it in the evening if everybody wants to. But I kind of tend to agree. I think that's kind of been the consensus. So the only other thing is Ken Adams sent me an email and said the prototype model railroaders have a monthly event, which apparently we are in conflict with on our 2-week schedule. So their every 4-week event is aligned with our 2-week event. I don't know if it's worth moving for that, but I wanted to bring it up because that's the one thing I know that we're kind of apparently the one scheduled thing we're in conflict with. So if we wanted to, we could move a week, slide a week, and we would be off from them. So I wanted to bring that up and see if there was an interest in doing that in either, waiting 3 weeks to have our next event or having a quick event next week.
Next,
And then
Can't
going,
wait 3 weeks because that's the day after Christmas. And I don't think you'll get a lot of people.
yeah, next week's better, I think, for that reason too.
Yep, I would concur.
do it now. Just go ahead and say we're going to do it next Saturday as well. And I will focus on seeing if we can twist someone's arm to put some program material together for next week. So
Another point, could you send the Zoom address with your email that you sent out like Thursday, because I had to go, where the hell was that address?
oh, I forgot to put it in there. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Oh gosh.
You didn't put the link in, Phil, and I was trying to get on. I was looking the hell all over for the link, and I tried. Maybe it was with the YouTube link, and then I thought, well, shit, I should just go to the website. I went to the PCR website, and sure enough, the link was there. But other than that, I wouldn't have found
Okay,
it.
I thought it was me. Okay.
No, actually, and I totally screwed up. I was trying to get it out and I doing a bunch of stuff and I totally screwed up. I apologize. But by the way, it's the same address.
Yeah.
All the time.
Good news.
So you can
I
just
think-
go take any email I've sent you with any one of these in the last 4 months. It's the same address.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I found it. I went back to my last calendar event and just found the link and said, I'll try this.
And by the way, the other thing to do is when you click on it and it opens the browser, before you go to click, say, open the Zoom app, click on that and click bookmark it and just bookmark it in your railroad bookmarks. And you'll literally have it. You don't even have to go look for it. You just go into your bookmarks and click on it in your bookmarks.
Is that link's got the password in it, right? So
It's got everything in it. Yeah. And guys, this is not a lockdown. I'm just told everybody, it's not a lockdown meeting. I mean, we get Zoom bombed. We get Zoom bombed. I just so everybody knows if somebody comes on and puts up dirty pictures, you're going to see them here because I'm not going to try to have a waiting room because that means I've got to sit here and watch when people come in, and it's too much hassle. Plus, I don't think we're of interest to virtually anybody.
No, you don't want the meeting. I tried talking to Zoom to see if I could get rid of the damn password as well. But as long as you have the link, you're good to go.
Yep.
Right. The links and the passwords and the link, and it's always the same. So, but I'll make sure I put it in next time. So we're going to do next week. All right. We're going to do 3 weeks. I guess I'm confused. Next week or 3 weeks? Next week.
And then we'll be every other week from that, and then that will give us that 1 week jitter, so we're not in conflict with the other events.
Right, exactly. And there's always going to be other events that open up that are in conflict, but that seemed to be the one that was permanent. So
The other answer to your question is that my meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning, it's so damn cold outside, I can't do any outside projects, and it warms up enough so I can go outside. So in the winter, 9 a.m. is a good time.
Yep.
Yeah. I
I'll
wanted,
let you,
go ahead.
go ahead, Joyce.
I just wanted to mention that I have a website and I have train songs. I'm a bluegrass musician. I have my own band and it's free. You can go to freshpickedband.com and you can listen to my train songs. Not all of them are train songs, but many are. And also I have a 5-minute video that was done by the National Garden Railway magazine of my railroad. And that's free also. It's on my train, on my freshpickedband.com website. So if anybody's interested, you're welcome to check those out.
Joyce,
like
if you'd like, you can throw it in the, if you've got a link, you can put it in the chat, click on chat, and you can put it over in the link, in the chat link. That way everybody can grab it from the chat link.
Oh,
I just did it for you.
There it is. It's there. So if anyone, you can just click on that and then when
Yeah.
this gets done, it'll be open in your browser.
thank you. I'm not very good with the computers. My layout is a G scale outside and it's all in the garage. Nobody's seeing it, so I just put it in the garage to protect it.
Seems to be it.
Yeah.
Hey, Phil, are you gonna have
Yes,
some
sir.
time this week? Maybe I can try the camera thing with you on a Zoom
Sure.
meeting and get it debugged before we try it next Saturday.
Sure. Sounds
Okay, I'll
good.
get in touch with you.
That's excellent. Yeah. The other thing I'd like to try is take the same setup you have, and I may actually get from you but try it with an iPhone.
I can
As
try it
this-
with an iPhone too.
Yeah, as the camera versus the GoPro, because you could actually join. I mean, what's interesting is you can actually join the Zoom meeting
Right, on the iPhone.
with
Yeah.
both, and I can, as the moderator, use the spotlight to switch between the two. So you actually have two feeds into Zoom, one which is the content and one which is the presenter. And essentially the producer, that's me, or I can assign that to you or whomever wants to do it, basically chooses which one of those is in the spotlight. And when you do the recording, that's what you see in the recording, is you see the spotlight. So you
Yeah,
can
that was
actually
cool.
do the editing, mixing in Zoom.
I was going with the GoPro for clinics because that works better than the iPhone if
Okay.
you're doing a live clinic. But maybe
Okay.
the phone is better for the Zoom meetings.
Yeah. So I think you're right for inputting to your computer. The interesting question there is what happens. What I think you're seeing in your computer, and that you've got two different apps competing now to use the camera video feed through Windows.
Yeah, but you can switch between cameras, but let's take this
Yeah,
offline
we'll take it
and
offline.
figure it out.
Yep. That's cool. It's all fun. So Charlie, what's that picture behind you?
So I've been using it. I'm a Canadian national modeler. I think I'm the only one in the Bay Area who models the CN because I'm Canadian, although that was over 40 years ago that I left. But so I've been modeling the CN, and I got interested in the area that I model. CN used a lot of Jeeps and Jeep 9s in particular. So that's a Jeep 9 from '56, and so actually, if you want, I got for a couple of minutes, I can show you what I've been doing. Are you interested?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of mistakes, but I from years ago, actually, I'll turn off the background because otherwise the camera will just a sec here. The camera will screw around. There. If years ago, I had a couple of these. These are Proto 2000 Jeep 7s. And I thought, well, I had them. What should I do with them? So I decided to convert them into Jeep 9. So this is the original sort of Rock Island one. And I've been working on this project for a while. I've been too busy to finish it. But if you look at that photo behind me of 4512, this is now what that looks like. I don't know how well you can see this. Put some light on it. But so what I did is I've got there's some CN has some very distinct features. If you can see the bell is very distinctive. Winterization hatches. I added dynamic brakes to it. I added the shades over the windows, and the louvers are different. These are really cool. I guess you guys have used them. You don't have the photo, but the louvers match. All of these different Jeep 9s have different louver patterns. So I filed off or sanded off all the old louvers and put on these Archer decals. If you guys use those, with they're a 3D kind of decal. So I put those on. The tricky part, I was talking to Earl about this. The hardest part I have, and I'm kind of finishing up now. I've got if you can see these, I've got, well, it's hard to see with the camera, but I've got replacing with the might be easier to go this way, with the wire. You can see them here, the wire grabs and so on. So I put a lot of details on the wire lift rings, but the hardest part were the freaking decals on the nose. I talked to Earl about this. Doesn't look so bad here in the camera, but the problem was the decal color didn't match this. There was no paint to match it, and of course the decal doesn't go over the bell. So it doesn't look so bad here in the camera. I think it's not so bad, but my biggest hassle was trying to get a paint that would match the decals. I think it looks okay, and then trying to fit the decals over these openings, because it's very, very hard to see. But there's a if I can get this closer here. The nose pattern here has a very thin black line. And I was talking to Earl about this. I thought, should I just paint the damn thing, because it's so hard to put the decal on to fit over all of these different surfaces. But I couldn't get the black line on it painted thinly enough. So after 8 sets of decal sets, I found a way to get the decal on, and I think it looks okay now. Looking decent. So anyway, that's the picture behind me. This is 4512, and I'm doing another one. The one that I showed you, the other Rock Island, is going to become it'll become actually this one. If I put this on my background, does it show up? I won't pick it for whatever reason. Anyway, so yeah, so I'm working on a couple of those, and what Frank said earlier is the thing that I think is most important is I want to hide the flaws where the decal overlaps the bell and stuff like that. You can kind of see the edges. You can see the slight paint difference color. So I'm hoping that the weathering will hide it. But it's been a fun project, and right now the last thing I'm doing is I took the plastic grabs off. I put wire grabs on, but the wire grabs, if you look at the detailed photos, I've got lots of detailed photos of that particular locomotive that I got from a guy named George Carpenter. I don't know if any of you know the name. Mark Schutzer knows him, but George apparently is a collector of photos. He has over 40,000 photos that he's got indexed. And when I wanted to do a specific locomotive, I talked to George, and he sent me a half a dozen photos to work from. And one of the things I noticed is the way the grabs are on, they have just above, the grab is actually on a flange that comes up and is bolted in. So the next thing I'm doing is I'm trying to get the nut bolt detail just above the grab iron. So I made a little jig so that I could hold the jig over the grab iron, so I could center where the drill goes, so the drill fits, because it's a very tiny opening that fits just above the grab. So I think it'll look pretty good when I'm done, and then I'm hoping the weathering will hide my mistakes. So that's what I've been working on.
Cool. Look forward to seeing it next week when you're more done.
Well, next week, actually, I already have 2 other events on the same day. Now with this, that's the 3rd. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do next Saturday. And they're all in the morning. Although with the lockdown, I was thinking that Santa Clara County in the Bay Area was not going to shut down for another 2 weeks. But I just heard last night that, what's her name? Sarah, whatever, Cody from Santa Clara has decided that we're going into lockdown tomorrow.
Right.
So I may be available. Is it-
Well, the Alameda County one, like I said, they announced it for Monday, starting, I guess, midnight Sunday night. And I went and looked at it, and it's pretty draconian again.
Yes, it is. My haircut
Yeah.
that was scheduled for Monday is now canceled. So I guess I'm gonna let my hair grow down, go along like it was in the 60s and 70s. I'll look nice and long again.
The only advantage to being follicularly challenged is, you can't use the bald word. It mortally offends me. But being follicularly challenged says you don't have to worry about it nearly as much.
Yeah, well, with my hair gone gray and my beard turned white, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm starting to look my age.
Oh, well, kind of all are. So I actually saw a video, and I need to go, I saw it on my iPad, and I need to grab it and put it on here because it was pretty amazing. It was a YouTube video of a guy visiting a professional model studio in Shenzhen in China.
Shenzhen, yeah.
In Shenzhen, and they employed 500 people making architectural models, and they went through and showed some of the stuff they were doing, and it's pretty amazing. But it's a 500-person company building these things.
Oh yeah, I've often wondered what it would be like to work for, as a professional, like movie makers, right?
Right.
They make these fantastic models, and it would be kind of interesting to be a professional model maker, and they probably have all kinds of techniques to.
Well, so here's an interesting thought process. I talked to Jim Kello, who's this guy in Florida. He runs this new tracks thing on Saturday and Wednesdays and Saturdays. I talked to him actually yesterday, and he found there is a professional model builders association. There's an association of professional model builders. And he apparently went and talked to him and said, hey, I can't join, but, and so they've apparently agreed to some sort of senior free membership for hobby modelists to join. And, he said exactly the same thing. It's just amazing what they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's kind of an interesting thought process, at almost two dimensions. One is at the dimension of, us learning how they're doing things, maybe not so much the other way, but, it could be interesting for younger people in the hobby as a way to see if this is a career opportunity. Because, it is an interesting thought process.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've often wondered if they've got techniques that we should use, not so much for accuracy, but for I'm never, ever happy with my work, no matter what I do. It's never right. But I'm wondering, I've often thought in the 70s, right, when the first Star Wars movie came out, and they had scenes of the, they had the X-wing fighters, and they had the scenes of the tunnel that was in the on the Death Star, right? There was all kinds of detail in there, right? And there was no CGI, so some model makers had to make these massive models that they flew the camera over to take those shots. And I've wondered how accurate those models, they look accurate when you're looking at it on the movie screen, but I'm wondering if they've got techniques, either using lighting, using composition, using all kinds of things to make it look so real, when in fact they throw these things together probably fairly quickly. So that's just a guess I have, but I'm betting they have some tricks like that.
Actually, I think for Star Wars, if I remember right, there was a couple PCR members who actually worked on that.
Oh, that'd be cool. I'd like to.
No, they're sadly, I think they're dead now.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
So one of the magazines I have a subscription to that I absolutely love is Fine Scale Modeler, because you look at what people are doing in fine scale tank building and, ships and stuff like that. They have great techniques in those magazines that just totally apply to what we're doing.
Yeah. I need to learn those and try them. And some of them, I might be doing some stupid thing by hand that turns out there's a real easy trick that my thick brain can't come up with.
I think there's a really interesting thing in all of that, which is they only model that which is going to be seen.
Yeah.
And,
which the camera will see.
Which the camera's going to see. That's what I'm saying. And so, it's interesting. A lot of times when you see, if you've been to a set or anything, the same thing. And it's an interesting concept, from a modeling perspective. Do we not do that properly?
Right. That's my point.
Right. Do we sometimes, in other words, if the back of the building's never going to be seen, do you really need to do anything there? And it's interesting because there's this philosophical thing that says you build the whole building and, you know, but then there's this question that says, well, if you're putting a building on your layout and the back's never going to be seen,
Well,
why do you even do anything on
I
it?
mean, that part's straightforward. Like when I do my track, I always run, you know, I've got one of these flow quill pens or whatever, you know, that I run to put rust along the rail. Okay. But I don't do the inside rail because I don't see it. Right.
Right.
Because I'm lazy. So, but there are things that I think you can do with composition because the people who are framing it know where the eye's going to go.
Right.
And so they know where you're going to look. So the objects maybe that are on the periphery or objects that are just at the edge of the depth of field, they don't bother with the same level of accuracy. And I think there's a way to do that, you know, both from a scenery point of view or even from a model point of view, you know, to trick the eye so that the parts that you're going to see help hide the pieces that you either don't complete or you don't have to do with the same level of precision.
Well, and that also applies to the simple things of lighting. You know, you look at what you do for theatrical lighting and all of that. It applies to us as well.
Yeah, like I'm thinking about this model I'm doing. I'm going to all the trouble to put these nut bolts on there simply because I want them. But I have a feeling that no one looking at the model would notice whether they're there or not. You know, I'm putting them there because I want them, but sometimes I think I'm nuts because, you know, I want them there because I've got a photograph and I'm trying to match the photograph, but it probably doesn't make a damn bit of difference to anybody looking at the model whether they're there or not, and no one would care.
Well, I think that's the thing is like you know, like I said, for the cab interior for those F units,
yeah.
What's interesting, have you ever seen and this is the side, the All Nations F units have two sides to the shell and they screw together with a reverse bolt thing. And it's literally, so if you look in the cab, what you see when you look through the cab windows, you see this huge bolt up on the ceiling. So it doesn't look very realistic. So, you know, trying to spend a lot of time making something really realistic to go in there without replacing the bolt, which is a huge job, doesn't make sense. So you kind of just do something, but it's the idea that, you know, when the engine goes by, you see that there's somebody in it, and it makes it look a little more realistic. But I think what you're doing is much more something you would bring to a contest.
Yeah, well, I don't think I'd bring this to a contest because I would I see all the millions of mistakes in it. So, but you know, for me, I want to get it so it looks like a particular photograph.
Right.
And you know, and I'll get some pride and hopefully I'll have some pride when I'm done in how it looks.
But that's what makes it fun is the idea. It's not just, you know, it's the prototype and the research and the getting it right that makes it so much fun.
Yeah, Don Morenzi, too bad he doesn't attend these, but you know, Don got me hooked on this stuff years ago in terms of I just like to, you know, build stuff. And he got me, not because he persuaded me, but he'd ask me questions that were interesting questions. And then he helped me research and so on to the point where I didn't realize how much fun it is actually doing the research. And I've met some really great guys like this George Carpenter guy who is, when I go through my CN books, my Canadian National books, and there are all these photo, you know, I've got the Special Interest Group magazine, there are all these photo references. And half of them were this guy, George Carpenter. And it turns out George lives here in Palo Alto. You know, so by doing the research, I ended up meeting a really interesting guy. So yeah, the research is as much fun as anything. Now, of course, I'm anal retentive, so now I have to have my models match the pictures that I got. So, but anyway, it's fun.
Yeah, research can become a whole hobby on its own.
Oh yeah. Well, you know Don, and that seems to be his big thing is research. He's good at it. He's got lots of references.
But always remember the fundamental goal of all this. If you have 4 hobbies, you live 5 years longer.
Yeah, there you go.
And so I mean, Earl made a good comment. It's another hobby. I mean, and that's actually a great point about model railroading. So the thing I try to tell people is, you know, the nice thing about model railroading, it's a hobby that can actually be multiple pursuits.
Oh yeah.
Right. You know, the 3D printing and the learning the skill set to do 3D printing, and that is kind of a separate community that's associated research, operations. You know, it's really interesting because you can do things within the kind of umbrella that are very different in kind of pursuit of the same things. I think is what makes it neat and keeps everybody kind of vibrant and excited.
Yeah, I've got more inspiration, I think, sometimes from the research and looking at these old photos. You know, a lot of them I've shared with the group over time that I have from looking at some of the model magazines.
Yep.
I agree
Well-
too. That's been my my project for this week has been a bunch of research stuff. And Charlie, sort of with you, I'm doing Canadian, but of course it's the maroon and gray stuff.
Oh, well, actually, it's funny. I got into CN because my mother told me that her father, he was a conductor on the CN. So that's what got me going into CN when I was young. I didn't realize until I was older and much older that I got it wrong. He was actually a CP conductor.
Ah, okay.
And so I've been lusting after CP stuff, and I've been lusting after the Royal Hudson that's sitting in the cabinet over at the train shop in Santa Clara. So
That's the Rapido Trains one?
yeah, it's gorgeous, isn't
gorgeous.
it?
Are you going to get their D10 as well?
Yeah. Oh, I know of it. I don't have one. Every time I open up my wallet and the moths fly out, I'm reminded by how much those damn things cost, but they're beautiful models.
Yeah. Well, my current project is I don't have anything to really show, and it wouldn't be very interesting anyway. I just built the module for what's going to be Innisfail. That's on the line between Calgary and Edmonton.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, there's a guy by the name of James Pearson, who unfortunately passed away from cancer a couple of years ago. But he wrote books called Vanishing Sentinels, all about grain elevators.
I know the book. Yeah.
Okay. So he did me up a set in N-scale of the all 7 of the elevators that were in Innisfail.
Oh, you're kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah. So now I've got the module built. I've just got to put the track on it and start building those.
In N-scale, I assume.
It's N-scale, yes.
Oh, that would be great. Well, I grew up in Winnipeg, which is very flat. So I've joked and said I have the world's easiest scenery. I get a piece of plywood, paint it white for winter, and lay down the track, and I'm done.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, no, you have all 7. That would be great.
Yeah. So it's going to be coming. And the research I've been doing, I was up there back in the 1980s, and I took a bunch of pictures myself along there. But I've also been looking at John Garden's books and other ones with pictures of that, as well as Google Earth.
Yeah.
Because it's only been a few years ago, I guess, but all of those elevators have now been torn down.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, what era are you modeling? It must be going back.
I'm doing transition era.
Yeah, the 50s or whatever. Yeah.
Right. So it was still there, and I've got some great pictures showing the old first generation diesels, like the one behind you.
Yeah.
So that's been fun doing that research.
Well, I love the first generation diesels, but the CN and the CP, the CNs were so idiosyncratic in terms of what they did, which I'm having fun. So I've got photographs, and actually I think George has a lot of CP photos as well. So if there's things you want, what he's done is he's got a full index, which he gave to me, of both his steam and his diesel collection. And I think he's got something like 30 or 40,000 photographs that are all indexed. So what I do is I look for my area, which was Manitoba, and I can go and I can search his index and find the time period, like 1956 and someplace in the West, and and then he'll give, and I'll see a whole roster of photos. So it's pretty amazing. He's got a fantastic collection. So
I'll have to double check, but I think I may have run across his name. That sounds familiar.
It may be. If so, ping me, because I promised to visit George. George wants me to come and visit again, but I can't with the COVID.
Right.
He's getting on in age now, so he's moving on. But he has a fantastic collection of brass, all custom painted.
He's in Palo Alto, you said?
Yeah, he's in Palo Alto. I was shocked to find out, because I reached out to him over the CN special interest group, because I was curious. And it turns out I figured he's here in the Bay Area. He's just a few blocks away from a good friend of mine. So
I should get in touch with him too.
Yeah, you should. He would love to talk. And he's got a fantastic collection of photos.
Charlie, you should ask him if he'd be interested in doing a Saturday morning 45 minutes.
You know
talking.
What? I kind of resisted it. There's not many Canadian modelers here in the Bay Area,
but I think it's still interesting to folks to see kind of stuff that's available. I don't know. What does everybody else think? The non-Canadian modelers, would that be an interesting topic to have somebody come in and talk about kind of collection of photos like that and details?
Yes.
Yeah, because
It's-
actually,
it's
some of the
clinic
building
on research. If
Yeah,
you're
I mean, I think it'd be, say, hey, here's, because I think that understanding that and how, because it turns out, yeah, it's Canadian, but, half the practices are the same. I mean, I can't imagine there's much more than 6 to 8 degrees of separation between the Canadian Northern and the Northern Pacific.
Try like 1 degree of separation. I mean,
That's what I'm saying. So, so much of what he would have is actually applicable to other railroads as well. So I think I think it'd be a piece. I mean, it's always interesting to get things that people have never seen before. And like Earl says, I think true original material is very interesting to see.
well,
So
I'll
yeah,
be happy to talk to him, and he's fairly technical, technical savvy, techno savvy. So Mark Schutzer knows him really well because they both work at SRI.
oh, okay,
And,
cool.
So
Well, yeah, if you could just say, or throw me on an email and say, hey, we were talking and we'd love to have you come in and do this. And, you can set it up. And if he's got pictures, the beauty is if he's got pictures,
he's got pictures.
it's really easy to pick 20 or 30 pictures to share and talk about those as it'd be very interesting to have him talk about the 20 or 30 pictures he thinks are most interesting in his collection.
Yeah, well, that might be interesting. Like I say,
Just-
they're all digital. They're all digital photos.
Right, exactly. And he can just put them up. We can share them in Zoom. He can say, I mean, it'd be interesting to ask him to say, take a week, go figure out the 30 most interesting pictures in your collection and why you think they're interesting.
Yeah.
And come show those to us and talk about why you think they're interesting. And, either from a modeling perspective, from a unique prototype perspective, that's always, because those become where there's, this is why I think this is interesting, because I saw this and this is very unusual. And this, to me, that's a great way of getting a lot of really interesting and unique information.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I'll talk to him. I
cool.
mean, he's eager to, I think he's tired of being locked up. So he might look forward to it.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun.
Yeah. I'll talk to him. Sure.
Cool. That just used all my energy up getting excited about that, because you can tell, guys, the prospect of having something to have as content is pretty important. It's a challenge. It's a challenge getting folks to come in and talk. So,
and this is interesting for me too, because besides the Canadian stuff, you all probably know I also do some Asian modeling and other things too. So that perspective on foreign railroads, finding how to research that as opposed to your hometown branch line is interesting too. Get the differences between those as well as the commonalities.
Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
So sorry I was late joining, had some other stuff I had to do. I don't know if Phil had shared yet the thing that I sent you or not.
Yeah, Paul, I did. I shared it right at the beginning. It was, we all agreed that, everybody's saying, this is so damn inconvenient. And everybody's saying, well, what's the problem?
Right. Yeah,
other than missing our quarterly events,
it's kind of hard without having a hobby like this, because a lot of the other stuff that I do is totally on hold too, like all the music stuff and the choirs and everything that I do.
Yep.
So it's really great to have a hobby like this where you can get involved with it and forget what's really going on.
Though I have to say, for the guys at the Alameda Club, we had there was 2 weeks ago, there'd been some discussions about having an opening process and getting back in and that. And I mean, by Friday, it became really clear that you're probably not going to have, it's going to be hard. And, so, I mean, literally, other than one guy who went to Arizona, was moving to Arizona, and he was able to go in and get his stuff, nobody's been in the building since
That's the part I've found the hardest is, my favorite part of the hobby is operations, and I visit with lots of different guys and do a lot of operations, and I just miss the community, just getting together, having a coffee, donut in the morning, running a railroad for a few hours, and then bullshitting over lunch or whatever. I absolutely miss that the most.
Yep. Well, I still hope that March, April, things will start to settle down. Which reminds me, I totally forgot to go do my reservation for the PCR convention. I'll do that, and I'll get a report on how we are doing next week. Because I figure it's going to either happen or it's not going to happen. If it's going to happen, it's going to be reasonably safe. So
Well, it's still scheduled for what, March?
I think it's the end of March, early April.
Early April, I'm trying to remember, but if it's not set up to be virtual, it's not going to happen in person. Reality is, we're not going to get, the vaccine is going to start being distributed. It's going to get distributed, working its way through the pyramid of need. And it won't be generally available for most people till the summer. And then, of course, you have to wait for the vaccine to have its effect. And for, now, if everybody would wear their damn masks and people would obey things, we could probably get the exponential spread under control, but people aren't doing it. So until it happens, it's going to be a while before we get to meet in person.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Charlie. I've been participating in a COVID spread survey study at Stanford. Now in my third month, but they give me a blood test and a nasal swab every month. So far, everything's been negative, but they're kind of like you are. They're saying it's going to take a little bit longer than people think. And so far, I mean, the testing has gone well, apparently, for all of the 3 ones that are being approved, but still, we don't know exactly what's going to happen.
Exactly.
And as you say, people are not following directions, and that's really bad.
It's so damn frustrating, because if you get the exponential spread down so that it's below 1, so that, then it shrinks, we could do lots of things, still maintaining like I have no problem wearing a mask at an operating session if that's what it took. But I'd rather be doing that than not having any at all. And that's kind of why I'm super frustrated.
Yeah, I read this morning a fascinating article about Melbourne, Australia, and what that particular state in Australia did. And they've gone now 2 months with no cases.
Yeah.
And what they did is they did a severe lockdown for a couple of months. Everybody wore masks. They got it under control.
And then once it's under control, it doesn't spread if people wear masks.
Exactly.
And you can have an 80% normal life instead of a 10% normal life.
But here's the reality. The reality is there are 4 kinds of people. And Phil's law is when you don't know the absolute percentages through some scientific analysis, you spread them equally because you're probably close to being right. So let's do 4 groups, 25% each. 25% of the people are so stupid, you have to hit them with a hammer to have them do anything. I mean, so just real simple thing. The U.S. Army will not take anybody under an IQ of 91 because it's too much effort to supervise them for the value they create. In other words, those people are not valuable as cannon fodder because they are too ineffective as cannon fodder. That's 10% of the U.S. population. So, those people, there's a whole group of people that unless somebody comes out and says you're going to get arrested, and it just comes to that point, they don't pay attention. Then you got on the other side, you got 25% that are probably like a lot of us that are just scared to death of this and being incredibly pragmatic. Then you got 25% that understand it's an issue, but forget occasionally. And then you've got 25% that are total denial that this is anything other than the flu. The problem is, even if that 25% that really pays attention are all wearing masks and reducing their R naught from 3 down by 90% to 0.3, the 25% that are kind of paying attention are maybe going to be 60% efficient, 70%. So they're down to under 1. The 25% that's in denial, they're going to be at around 2. And the other 25%. So the interesting thing is until you do the lockdown and you actually force a group of people to do it, the problem is in the U.S., we're not going to be effective in having a lockdown because you can't do it in limited geographies. It just moves around then.
Right.
You lock down here and it goes away, but it's going up here. The minute you open up here, it comes back. So here's the way you got to look at this. And it's a really simple view. And by the way, I'm going to tell you this is really a Bosonian view when I tell you. 13, 14 million people have had it tested for this. The numbers are 5 to 7 to 1 more people have had it than were tested. That says 60 to 70 million people have had it. Of those, 70% were asymptomatic. That means 15 million people have already been vaccinated in the United States. They were vaccinated naturally by getting the disease and developing a resistance. We're popping through 200,000 a day. Again, 5 to 7 to 1 says 1.2 to 1.4 million per day are getting it. It's going to run at that level for the next 60 to 90 days. You go through the math, that's another 80 to 100 million people that are going to get it, added to those 70. We're going to be at 150 to 160 million by the end of January. You add on 50 million of vaccine and you're to herd immunity. By the way,
That could be, but we don't know. We don't know that getting it, how long that immunity lasts. That's one of the things
everybody seems to say there's not a lot of people re-getting it. By the way, the whole reason I got to this point of view is the guy Gupta, who's on NBC, back in July, he was getting interviewed. He made a comment. He says, it looks like COVID is following exactly what H1N1 did in the United States. And if you go pull the H1N1 chart from 2009 and you project and look at what's happening with COVID, it's the same thing. We're probably 2 or 3 months later. What happened with H1N1 was they had a huge surge in October, November, December, and they had another 70, 80 million people get it. The vaccine came out in December, and it was a flu vaccine, so it was widely distributed. By the end of January, it was gone. And you can actually see the math. The people that got it in the first wave, again, 50 to 60 million. People in the second wave, 60 million. Vaccine, 60 million. Got it to herd immunity. And so to my mind, it looks to me like this is exact. And by the way, it's got good news because it says it's probably March. But yeah, I think by then things will start burning down. Now, by the way, there's a side to this that says it's not necessarily totally bad news for us. Because if this thing's going to run, we'd like it to run as fast as it can to get to the other side. Right? I mean, I'm really serious. If you can't be Australia, and we're not going to be Australia in America,
No.
we are so far past that point. So therefore, I mean, all of us are going to stay isolated. So, I mean, the best thing we can hope for is that it gets, through enough of the population, enough vaccine to get to the point where it's safe to reemerge as soon as possible. And that's a terribly negative view, but that's kind of the view is now. It's now time to get it over with without overwhelming the hospitals.
Yeah, it's rip the Band-Aid off. We got to get through the knothole.
It's the only path out, unfortunately, now for us. I'm not even sure lockdowns do any good.
Well, they do in the sense of
they help. They help, but they're not going to solve it.
Oh, they help the medical
they help
the medical curve.
Yeah, that's all it helps.
That's the real issue right now. Well, let's just hope none of us on this call get it.
Yeah. So by the way, the biggest thing I think to getting this, other than people, most people get it either get it at home or get it at work. But I think the other big thing is just what I think of as good people. Is people have friends that they think are good people, and good people don't get this. Therefore, I'm comfortable getting together with them. I think that's a lot of what's happening. It's, the point is you can't trust someone because they've been a friend to do things that are going to be the right things to protect from this. You just got to be really careful. And if it was interesting, one of the members of a group I'm in decided at Thanksgiving to go visit their family, and the grandkids came from Texas and actually in an area that's had a lot of COVID. And, so he actually told everybody, he says, I'm going to just take the next 10 days and be very isolated. Of course, that ends up moving into the time where we have to shelter at home now, so it doesn't matter anyway. But I think that's the thing is that's, being responsible and saying, I may have done something that's a risk, and therefore versus just, coming in and because if you understand this, it's pretty easy to understand if you're exposed to someone, what the time frame is where you're going to get sick, and to call those people and say, are you guys feeling okay? Anybody have any issues? Because those are the kind of things that tell you have an issue, a problem. Yeah. Oh, well. Who'd have thought we'd be talking about this in December?
Well, I didn't, but oh well.
Yeah, we'll just see what happens with the rest of the holiday period too, and whether people are going to follow the guidelines that are put out. whether something is going to be another surge following the new year.
Hope I have another meeting, so.
Yeah.
Good seeing you, Brandon.
Good to see you. We'll go,
Thanks for
James.
setting it up again, Phil.
So excellent. I will, I think we're probably kind of reaching the end. When you start to get the COVID talk, it's kind of time to call it. Just say that. It's just, I try to, the problem with this COVID thing is, we have this discussion and you try to be positive about it. Because, when people start talking about, we're not going to be able to get together or do anything until after summer of next year, that's just, it's just kind of, it's depressing. I kind of understand why the suicide rate in people is going up. It's kind of like, no, let's have a little bit of, potentially there's some hope here, I hope. So.
Let's hope the pessimists among us are wrong and things look good.
I hope so. Yeah. And it's not so much for individually, it's just for everybody, for our kind of mutual psychological. Anyway. So again, if anyone has something they'd like to present, Charlie, you have the conversation about the historical photos. Love that. If anyone else has something they'd like to present and talk about, give me a buzz. And with that, I'll wish everybody a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Yep. Thank you.
Have a good one. Thanks, guys. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.